There's lunch break. All right.
I know, I know she could.
Well, technically, I didn't know us.
Feeling in my gut that she was the one to.
Me too.
She was a good
What happened to
Maybe she's smart. She said you should. I think it's a speedy, right?
Yeah.
So she could just swear the jury and come back. Yeah.
All the walls.
You know that.
It's a little bit of it's a lot of yeah. You'll see where she is in relation. See?
Are you ready, Ms. Rivers? Okay, let's get back on the record in State versus Hall. I'm going to have Deputy Gordon check in a minute with the jurors. How are we doing with Ms. Scott? She's ready? Okay, we'll bring her in a second. Juror 20 was having a difficult time during the break. She has the daughter who was the victim of an assault in Idaho not all that long ago. And watching Miss Scott get emotional prompted her to get emotional about her daughter. And so she asked to talk to me about how she should process her feelings about her daughter. And all I explained was that it's understandable how you might have a reaction because you see someone else who is a daughter who is sad. She said it has nothing to do with the facts of the case. It was, she said, I was triggered and I want to make sure I can get back in there and stay on point. I explained to her that whenever she needs to take a break, she should, that I didn't expect that Miss Scott was going to be watching any other videos, and that if the videos were shown again, it would be in a more sterile environment where it's just someone from law enforcement saying, this is what the videos show. And Juror 20 said, that's something that she's pretty sure she could manage. She just asked to be able to walk up and down the hallway a couple times, and then she said she'd be ready. I wanted to share that with you because I didn't expect to have that encounter, just that she needed a Kleenex and all of a sudden she was standing in my chambers. Anything you want to get on the record in connection with Juror 20, Mr. Abate?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, Ms. Feely?
No, Your Honor, I do want the record to be clear that Ms. Scott, when she was on the stand, she put her head down and was sobbing, or appeared to be sobbing. And then when she got up and left in front of the jury, she was also very visibly crying pretty hard.
Right.
So I can see why that would have affected jurors the way it did. And at this moment, I'm not moving from this trial, but I certainly just want to make sure that it was clear that she was crying.
Okay, I think that's an important thing to add to the record. It's what prompted me to ask Mr. Abate to think through whether he was going to play any more of the videos, because you have accurately described Ms. Scott's reaction, which is an entirely understandable reaction, but one that can create concerns as the jury is trying to process the evidence as opposed to feelings and whatnot. You stand by your approach that with Ms. Scott, no more videos. If you play more, they'll be through the detective or someone else?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that will address it. But Ms. Feely, I know you will be watchful. And if additional concerns develop concerning how Ms. Scott is presenting to the jury, let me know. I want to be clear. I don't find anything inappropriate through Ms. Scott. I didn't hear you saying otherwise. I think it's a very natural reaction to what has to have been an exceedingly traumatic situation. But we need to do what we can to minimize the jury's exposure to things like that, which is why I suggested we take a break. And we did. It sounds like Ms. Scott is ready to come back. Let's get her situated on the stand before we bring the jurors in.
Before we bring her in, I just want to put one thing on the record. During the break, I went to use the restroom that's outside the court.
Is it okay that Ms. Scott's in the courtroom right now?
Yes.
Okay. Come on up, please. Keep going.
And when I was in there, actually, both me and Mr. Rao happened to, he had already gone in there. I went in there later, but the important part of this conversation is that juror number 22 was also in there. He's the tall African-American male. He works at Georgia Tech.
Yep. The scarf guy.
Yes. Me and Mr. Rao and I were not having any sort of conversation about anything, and neither one of us spoke to juror number 22, but I just wanted to be on the record.
Okay, that he was out there rather than in the jury space.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Anything else before we bring the jurors in?
No, yes.
Okay, Ms. Feely, anything else? All right, if they're ready, let's bring them in, please. You doing okay for the rest of this? We're not gonna play any more videos, okay? All right.
All right, sir. Judge, President of the county court.
Thank you, Deputy Gordon. Ladies and gentlemen, we were in the midst of the direct examination of Ms. Scott when we took a break. Mr. Abate, when you're ready, let's resume those questions.
And this guy, that's pretty, if you need it or want it. Ms. Scott, during the break, did you and I have any conversation about your testimony at all?
No.
And I think we left off, and we're not gonna play the video again, but I wanna talk about some of the things that we saw and what you mentioned today. So in that video, do you see where it starts, where you're you're headed down the stairs? Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
Is it fair to say that that video doesn't capture the initial shot that you heard when you and Corey's hands were released?
Yes, it's not the whole video.
And do you remember what Mr. Hall was wearing that night?
Yes,
What was he wearing?
it was a blue shirt and I think some black shorts.
And while on scene that night, did you talk to officers and Detective Barry that night? The shorter female African-American detective. Did you talk with her about what you heard, saw, and everything that was told this jury here today?
Yes, I did.
And just got through all of this during the arguments, or hearing the argument, and then before, during, and after the shooting, was your daughter still in the backseat of Corey's car?
Yeah, she was in there the whole time.
All right, couple more questions. At any point during that night, did you ever see the firearm that Corey had in his waist? Did you ever see it come out of his waist?
No,
Did it come out of his waist in the car when you guys were talking?
no,
When Corey got out of the car and was talking to your mom, does it ever make an appearance?
no,
And as Corey walks away with your mom up the stairs to take her into her apartment, do you ever see his gun?
no,
And when you come up after you send a text and you heard arguing and the glass breaking, when you get up to the top of the stairs, do you ever see a gun in Corey's hand?
no,
And then after Corey is shot, and you come back up the landing and see him laying in front of your mom's apartment, do you ever see a gun in Corey's hand?
no.
The only place that you saw Corey's gun in his waistband underneath his shirt and his sweatshirt.
Yes, it was on his waistband.
I don't think I'm further this time around.
Ms. Scott, Ms. Feely may have some questions for you. I have one. When you came up the stairs after the shooting had happened and encountered Mr. Blunt, do you remember if he was lying on his stomach or lying on his back?
He was laying on his back.
Thank you. Ms. Feely, do you have questions for Ms. Scott?
Ms. Scott, you mentioned that you were driving Corey's car, is that right?
Yes,
Why were you driving his car?
we shared the car at the moment because I got into a car accident with my car.
You already mentioned talking with Detective Barry,
Yes,
and you gave a statement to her very close in time to the incident happening, right?
yes,
And you wanted to make sure you told her everything to help her investigation.
yes,
And you wanted to give as much detail as possible.
yes,
And the state asked, and you said you told Detective Barry everything that you just told them, is that right?
yes,
But the day that this happened, when you talked to Detective Barry, you did not tell her that you went up there before the initial Miss Stuckey and Mr. Blunt going up there.
I did tell her that. When she asked me, she only asked what happened. And that's when I was telling her, like, within that incident, what happened. She didn't ask me, like, before. So that's probably why it wasn't mentioned. She just asked me, like, how did that happen?
Okay, so she didn't ask you, so you never mentioned that you and your mother went in the apartment before this happened?
I don't remember, but I did tell her. She just kept asking me what happened. She didn't ask me, like, can you start from top to bottom? She just asked me what happened. How did y'all get shot at and stuff? She didn't ask me the whole story.
So it's your testimony today that you and Miss Stuckey went upstairs, and this is the only mention of Mr. Hall saying something derogatory. That's your testimony?
I'm gonna object, Your Honor. Can we approach?
Great. Hold on one second, Scott. Come right over here. Before you. All right, I'm gonna have Ms. Feely repeat her question if she wants to ask it. You, much like with Mr. Abate, would be a great Jeopardy player because you buzz in early. Wait till she's done with her question before you answer. I think you knew what the answer was, but actually Mr. Abate he didn't hear the tail end of the question. And so what he thought he heard, he objected to, but that's actually not what was asked. So we're gonna try again. We just wait till the question's done, and then whatever you've got to say, you'll be able to say it. Okay.
Okay. And I'm going to ask it a little bit more, hopefully straightforward. So if Detective Barry didn't include in your report that you told her you went up there a first time before this incident happened, that would be because you didn't tell her, right? Because she didn't ask you.
Right, but I did tell her when she came to my house. When she came days after, I think it was in May, when she came to get another report and I had to identify, and she asked me the whole thing, I did tell her that.
So she talked to you more than once.
She talked to me that night, and then she just came for me to verify, like, was this Corey? Is this? And I was like, yeah, and then she made me explain to her what happened. That was it.
Okay.
But I did tell her that.
So if it's not in her report, that would just be a mistake on her part.
Most likely.
You know, that's all I have at this time.
Okay. Mr. Abate, any redirect for Ms. Scott?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Jurors, do you have any questions for Ms. Scott? And if so, if you'll pass them to Deputy Gordon. Thank you. All right, counsel.
Streer.
You ready? Okay. Ms. Scott, a few more questions. How often did your daughter stay with your mom?
She stayed with her a couple of times, like by herself. I even like if I need to go out with my friends or go to work, I'll drop her off and she'll be with my mom, my nephew.
Okay, but like once a week it would happen or once a month?
I couldn't count. It would just be like I'll call and be like, "Hey, can Jalea come over?" But it was often throughout the month.
Okay, so this wouldn't have been the first time
No.
ever you were leaving your daughter
No,
with your mom?
she's always been over there.
Okay. How many times before that night had Corey and Mr. Blunt and Mr. Hall met or been in the same place?
In that month.
Ever met?
Yeah,
Since you've been spending time, you were spending time with Corey, Mr. Blunt, it sounds like you said 7 months or so before this happened.
Yeah.
So during those 7 months, how many times, if ever, had Mr. Blunt been in the same place with Mr. Hall so they'd say hey or they'd recognize each other?
Twice.
Twice? What was the other, if was this one of the two or it was a total of 3 times?
3 times.
Okay, what were the other kinds of events?
My sister's memorial, and then I had my sister's birthday at my house.
Okay, different sister or same sister?
Same sister.
Okay. Do you know if Mr. Blunt ever went inside your mom's apartment that night?
No, I don't know.
Okay, he could have been in, not, but when you were upstairs, he was not.
It's not.
Okay. You don't know if, when you weren't up there, when you're in the car with your daughter, you don't know if he was inside or in the doorway or on the landing.
No.
You told the jury about sending a text message to Mr. Blunt.
Yes.
And then eventually you got out and went upstairs. About, as best you can estimate, how much time passed from sending the text to opening that back door so your daughter had air and then you went upstairs?
Like 17 seconds.
Short.
Yes, literally.
Mr. Abate asked you a question about, we watched that video, and the video starts at a certain point, and his question was along the lines, I'm not going to get the words quite right. Did that show all of the gunshots? And your answer was, that's not the whole video. I want to press a little bit on that. Have you seen some video that's longer, or did you mean that video didn't capture the whole thing? There were shots before the video started.
Yes, there were shots before the video started. There is no whole video. It's just that video starts literally when it was done.
Okay. The argument, to tell the jurors again, how it was that you and Mr. Blunt could hear or were aware that your mom and Mr. Hall were arguing that night before you went upstairs to check on your mom.
We were sitting in the car, and his car is really loud because I don't know, I guess it's his engine or something. And when you turn the car off, her apartment, I think the window in my nephew room was open, so you can hear everything in there. Like, you can hear the music, you hear yelling. If somebody was to stump, drop a glass, you can hear everything. So as soon as we turn the car off, we hear everything.
You mentioned your nephew a few times. Was he in your mom's apartment the night this happened?
No, he was on the way. He was supposed to be on the way.
Because he was going to spend the night with your daughter, and everyone goes to the aquarium.
Yes.
Okay. About how tall would you say Mr. Blunt was?
Like 5'10".
And about how heavy?
Mm.
Was he a skinny guy or?
Skinny.
He's a
Probably
bone.
like 120.
Oh, that is skinny. All right.
Yeah, he was really skinny.
The argument that you heard your mother be in with Mr. Hall that night, had you heard her argue like that with Mr. Hall before, or was there something different in your mind about the argument that night? Not the topic, but just like you mentioned sort of you heard aggressiveness or loud voices. It wasn't just a conversation.
No, they argued like that before. That's how I knew.
Okay. Do you remember anything Corey said to your mom when they were having the conversation? You mentioned that Corey's back was to you, who's at the front of his car, and your mom was up there against sort of the side of the apartment building. Can you describe generally what they were talking about? Do you remember anything Corey was saying in response to your mom?
He was just telling her that you're too beautiful. You have a beautiful family, and you still have a life ahead of you, because she was crying about my sister as well. And he was like, you still have a whole life ahead of you. You have a daughter right here who still loves you. You know, just get yourself together. He was just saying, like, giving her words of encouragement.
Okay. Do you know if that night when this happened, your mother had been drinking?
They were drinking.
Okay. And you know that because that's just something you know your mom does, or you could smell it on her, or when you were up at the top in her apartment, you could see it. Why do you say that?
I could tell by where she was talking.
Okay. And do you think there's anything else in her system that might have made it difficult for her to remember what was going on, or you think it was just alcohol?
That part I don't know, but alcohol, most likely.
Okay. Had you ever seen a gun inside your mom's apartment?
No, never.
At the time this happened, so April 2022, was Mr. Hall living full-time with your mom? If you know. I mean, you may not know. It's not your place.
No. Maybe, but no. Because like I said, when I go over there, most times he's not there.
And that would include April. I mean, you see your mom frequently enough that you're not just there once every 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know where, well, let me ask it differently. When the shots, the bullets started going through the door to your mom's apartment, was your mom outside the apartment where you and Mr. Blunt were, or was she inside the apartment?
She was inside.
Could you see where inside?
No, because the door was closed.
Okay. Mr. Abate, do you have any other questions for Ms. Scott based on the questions I just asked?
Would you mind, there was some noise in the back, would you repeat your last question? I heard her answer, but I didn't hear your.
Sure. The first two questions at the very end, one was Ms. Stuckey out on the landing with Mr. Blunt and Ms. Scott when the gunfire happened? Answer, no. She was inside the apartment. Then the follow-up was, do you know where in the apartment? I don't mean to tell you what she said, but it was, no, the door was closed. I couldn't see where she was. Did I didn't put words in your mouth?
You said everything right.
Okay, all right. Ms. Feely, do you have any, you do have questions?
Just very briefly.
Okay.
The judge had asked you a question about, other times that, Corey and the defendant had met or interacted. You said there were 2 previous times.
Yes.
During those 2 previous interactions, were there any issues or anything like that?
No.
Between Corey and, Mr. Hall, the defendant?
No.
That's it.
Ms. Feely, do you have any other questions for Ms. Scott? All right, thank you, ma'am, for being here. I appreciate it. You're welcome to take that water if you want it. All right. State's next witness.
The state would call investigator Streer.
Do you swear affirm that the testimony you will give will be true, the whole truth, and what you say you got?
I swear.
Go ahead and have a seat. State, explain your name for the record.
I'm Detective Ivory Streeter. It's IVORY STREETER.
Good afternoon, or good morning, investigator Streer. How are you?
Good.
Can you please tell the jury where you're employed?
The City of Atlanta Police Department.
Okay. And what's your capacity in the City of Atlanta Police Department?
I'm a detective with the fugitive unit.
And what is the fugitive unit?
So the fugitive unit apprehends warrant individuals with active warrants.
Okay. Do y'all investigate, trying to figure out where those people may be?
Yes, that's part of our assignment where we pretty much do the locating. There's various investigative ways of where we can locate individuals.
Okay. If a person has an active warrant out of the City of Atlanta, and they are arrested in another state or another jurisdiction, are there ways that you are notified?
Yes, there will be a detainer that will be issued through the National Crime Information Center.
Okay. Stopping there. Can you explain to the jury exactly what a detainer is?
The detainer is documentation letting us know that the person with the active warrant out of the Atlanta Police Department has been apprehended and that jurisdiction has a hold. They've been placed in their jail.
Okay. So when there's a person out of the City of Atlanta that has a City of Atlanta warrant and you are notified of their apprehension, do you place the detainer?
No. The exact process I'm not familiar with, but it goes through our records department.
Okay.
And the records department then contacts the fugitive unit.
Okay. And when you're contacted by a records department, what are they asking you to do?
So they're letting us know that our wanted person is in custody. And from there, myself as a fugitive investigator would contact that jail and check to see if the person had a court appearance.
You should check to see if the person has a court appearance?
Yes, so they'll have a court appearance once they're arrested, and there's a waiver, what's it called, a waiver hearing.
Are you referring to when a person's arrested out of state?
Yes, so a person arrested out of state will have a extradition waiver hearing, meaning they have a court appearance in front of a judge to where they can challenge the arrest out of jurisdiction, or they can waive that hearing and be transported back to hear their charges in the charging
Okay.
court.
And were you ever notified that a Jason Hall was arrested in another jurisdiction?
I myself wasn't. It was my partner, Carlos Smith. It was investigated by another fugitive investigator, but typically myself and Carlos Smith will go to other states to pick up individuals.
Okay, so once this notification came through of an arrest of Jason Hall, did you and investigator Carlos Smith fly to another jurisdiction to go and transport Jason Hall back to Fulton County?
We did.
Okay, and what date was that?
We flew to Cleveland on July 7th, 2022. And July 8th, that morning of July 8th, we picked up Mr. Hall and flew back to Atlanta, where he was taken to the Fulton County Jail.
Okay. And describe the process of going to pick up a fugitive in another jurisdiction. Are you flying commercial?
We'll fly commercial. So there's a special clearance. We obtain that clearance and we fly to that jurisdiction. We make contact with the jail, notifying them that we will pick up the next morning. And we pick up the individual, drive to the airport, get on a commercial flight, and return back to Atlanta.
And when you went to pick up Jason Hall, where did you take physical custody of him?
I can't begin to pronounce the county. It was Cayuga County to the Cleveland jail.
Okay. And after you got him into your custody, did you bring him directly to the airport?
Yes, we went directly to the airport, and from the airplane, he was transferred to a transporting officer who took him directly to Fulton County.
And is he taken direct? Are there any stops made between pickup and booking into the jail?
Not typically. I would assume he went straight from the plane once he got into the transporting vehicle straight to the jail.
And what day did you return?
That was July 8th, 2022.
Okay. And are you able to, how many of these transfers do you do on a yearly basis?
Several. They're pretty random. So I had one last week. I have another this week. I actually have two more. So that'll be 3 within this month.
Okay. Can you give an estimate of how many transfers you've done since picking up Jason Hall from Ohio?
Since I would say 10 to 15, at least. Just to give a fair number, safe number.
Have you ever had to go to made any other arrests of fugitives in between them?
Yes, we that's our daily assignment is searching and arresting fugitives.
How many arrests between the time you transported Mr. Hall and today?
Say it'd be safe to say over 20, that just to give a safe number.
And so do you remember the faces of every person you pick up?
No. Typically when you go to the airport or once you pick them up from the jail, you kind of rushing to get to the airport, safest manner, and you get to the airport, you complete paperwork. So it's not a lot of attention placed on the individual.
And In this particular case, when we talked, did you actually remember what Mr. Hall looked like, or were you able to recall what he looked like?
No,
Tell me that you were able to just confirm this transport based on your notes.
yes, it was based on not only notes, but the warrants and the extradition waiver, which is confirmed by the jail and our crime information center.
Okay. I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Feely, any questions for Investigator Streeter? All right, any questions from the jurors? All right, thank you, sir, for being here.
Thank you.
Next witness.
Next witness is going to be Investigator Barry.
Okay,
We'll start. It's going to be a long.
we'll start. So this witness, we will pause at some point because it'll be time to eat. But we'll press on until a maybe natural break point, and then we'll pick up with this witness's testimony after our lunch break. And I'm remembering it right now. Hopefully I'll remember at the end of the lunch break. Please, during the lunch break, talk amongst yourselves about your ability to stay until 6 tomorrow. Tomorrow would be that 1 to 6 window, if we can make it 6. If it's got to be 1 to 5, that's okay. And I'm going to check with the lawyers about how far they think they are into the case, if we're still on schedule or off or whatnot. And we'll talk about all that when you get back from lunch. But for now, we're ready for Detective Barry. Do you need a break or are you good? Okay.
You swear affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Okay.
Can you state his name on the record?
Savannah Berry, SAVANNAHBERRY.
Morning, Detective Barry. How are you?
I'm here. Thank you.
Detective Barry, where are you currently employed?
I'm currently with the Field Operating Divisions in Zone 6, which is East Atlanta, supervisor of the Evening Watch.
Supervisor of the Evening Watch?
Yes, sir.
What's your current rank or title?
Current title is sergeant
How long have you been employed with the city of Atlanta?
for about 11 years now.
How long have you been in law enforcement?
For maybe about 13 years now.
Currently, what are your primary duties with APD?
Right now, I supervise the responding 911 calls in East Atlanta, where my units, the officers, will respond to the 911 calls. I supervise those officers.
Are you directing your officers to those 911 calls?
Not each call, only, major crimes. Of course, I will go out and insist on those, but not every call.
You're supervising beat officers.
That's correct.
How long have you been in that capacity?
For a little over 2 months now.
I want to take you back to April 30th of 2022.
Yes, sir.
Where were you assigned on that date?
I was a detective with the homicide unit.
And how long did you serve as a detective on the homicide unit?
A little over 4 years.
Now, did you have a chance to respond to a 357 Sunset Avenue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What city and county is that?
That's the city of Atlanta, Fulton County.
And why did you respond to that particular location?
So how it works with homicide, we work on a rotation where all of our detectives' names are on a literal board. And if you're at the top of the list, no matter where you are, the very next homicide that happens in the city of Atlanta, you to respond immediately to that scene. So on the night of the 30th, I was at the top of that list. This particular homicide came up on Sunset, and I was called by a supervisor to come out directly to the scene, and I responded immediately.
Okay. And what do you normally do when you first get to the scene?
Well, the investigation starts as soon as I arrived there on scene. And this particular night, there was a supervisor, not my supervisor, the Zone 5 supervisor, who advised me there was a witness that was in the back of one of the patrol cars. And before I even walked through the scene, I was advised that I need to go ahead and speak with that witness. That was Ms. Scott. And I spoke with her in the back of the patrol car. And then from there, I was able to walk through the scene.
Okay. Do you recall how long you were speaking with Ms. Scott?
I was probably with her 10, maybe 15 minutes in the back of that patrol car, trying to get an understanding what was going on.
Okay. So when you arrive at a scene, as a homicide investigator,
Yes, sir.
are you generally the first person on scene?
Generally, no, but this particular night, I know I was the first detective on scene.
Detective on scene.
Yes.
Were there any other officers that were present when you arrived?
Yes, when I arrived, they were still trying to secure the crime scene, and honestly, the rest of the night, most of the responding units, the actual 911 calling responding units, were just preserving the scene for me, and they were still working on it upon my arrival.
Okay. And is it pretty common that you talk to the officers that arrive before you to get a lay of the land?
Yes, that's common.
And did you do that in this instance?
In this instance, I recall speaking with the supervisor when I arrived on scene, and then I spoke with who told me to speak with the witness. I spoke with the witness, and then from there, I was walked through the scene, but I believe it was crime scene who assisted me through, not another officer.
Okay. And what sort of things are you looking for when you first start going through a scene?
Well, I understood that this scene was with the gunshots. So I'm looking for shell casings, any fragments that would come from ballistics, period. Of course, the decedent was there on scene, and speaking with the witness before I even looked on the scene, I knew I wanted to look for footage. So that was something else I was able to retrieve. These are the common things we look for.
Okay. So when you started walking through the scene, are you taking pictures, or how are you capturing?
Crime scene takes the pictures for me.
Okay. Are you documenting what you want? Are you telling crime scene what you want to take the pictures of?
Yes, I tell them. They're also well experienced. They know exactly what needs to be taken care of. They take all the different angles of the photos. Of the evidence that we have there on scene. But yes, it is under my direction. As far as documenting, when I'm on scene, the whole scene is being recorded.
All right. Do you recall what evidence you collected from this particular scene?
Yes, there were specifically 8 shell casings. It was 40 caliber Smith & Wessons. There were some fragments, projectiles that were also collected. Cell phone was collected from the decedent. The decedent had a handgun on his waistband that was also collected, as well as the actual weapon that was used in this incident. That weapon was recovered. The defendant's keys were recovered. And I believe that was all that was collected. And again, I did collect footage as well.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 20.
Okay.
Previously admitted. Is that the location you responded to?
Yes, up the stairs.
Okay. And you can also look at the screen in front of you. Take it very if it's easier.
Is there something on the
Should I
screen?
put stay mute or unmute?
Stay mute, please. Thank you.
Where did this shooting occur in this picture?
You want me to show up here?
You can do that.
So when I arrived on scene, the decedent was laying here on the top of the stairway, right in front of this apartment.
Okay. And was there anybody else up there when you first arrived?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. Were there any other officers inside that yellow cape when you got there?
Yes, it will only be law enforcement that was inside. I just can't recall which personnel was at the top with the decedent at the time.
All right. And did you actually walk into the apartment?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna show you next, what's already been previously admitted is, State's Exhibit 49. And is that a picture of the interior where these events occurred?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so when you walk through a scene, are you notating with markers the evidence that you would like to collect and preserve?
When I arrive on scene, I don't have the markers. It's something that I had to mentally notate where I see what. And specifically with this scene, I recall there were shell casings that were spread out throughout inside this apartment. And it's actually the crime scene tech who will come out with the actual markers and lay down those markers for us.
Okay. But are you with the crime scene tech when she's laying down those markers?
I believe I was this night, yes.
Okay. And this particular scene, I'm going to, it's a pretty common, what's normally the first marker at a homicide scene?
Normally it is the decedent.
Normally the first marker is the decedent.
That's correct.
Will you start numbering the evidence, anything we start, I guess, you start with one of the decedent,
Mhm.
and then the things you find around the decedent, do you then go numerically after that?
I don't make that choice. Crime scene makes that choice. Where we both agree on is number one would be the decedent.
Number one will be the decedent.
It's no cause of what is number two.
And in this particular case, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 89.
Okay.
And then turn the reference.
Yes, sir.
What are those particular shell markers?
They appear to be shell casings.
Okay. And do you remember what caliber those shell casings were from?
Yes, they were .40 caliber, Smith & Wesson.
Okay. And then I'll show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 93.
Okay. Okay.
Are you familiar with this picture?
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay.
It's hard to say what the marking shows.
Is it hard to see because of the can you see what's to the left? Can you see what's to the left of the marker number 11?
Not distinctly.
A shadow?
It's all right, I'll get you something. we'll move on. Okay, okay. I'm showing you now, it's been marked as State's Exhibit 62.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Why don't you ask other questions while
Okay.
your crack
What is
IT team
Can
gets,
we describe what the State's Exhibit 62 is?
This is the inside of the incident location of the apartment number 537 Sunset.
Okay. And that particular picture, does it include the picture of a black couch?
Yes,
Okay. Were there any firearms recovered from underneath that black couch?
from the night of my incident, yes, it was.
Okay. And when those firearms were recovered, were they removed?
Yes, it was. It was collected.
Okay. And going back to State's Exhibit 93.
how about 67? That's what's on the screen right now.
All right. Where was the firearm recovered from?
So it was recovered from under the couch, just as shown in this photo right here.
Okay. And when that firearm was removed, was it recorded with placard number 11?
Yes, yes, it was.
Is it common to remove a firearm from a scene before placing the placard number where the firearm is?
Yes, for testing purposes.
And how many total shell casings were recovered from inside that scene?
There were 8.
Now, did you observe the front door of that particular residence?
Yes, there were 8 holes in that door as well.
Okay. And were you able to tell anything about or conclude what caused the holes in those doors?
The gunfire.
And based off of the door, were you able to conclude anything about the direction of travel of where the gunfire originated from?
It originated from inside of that same apartment that I just pointed out in that photo. So the shots would have started from inside of that apartment and going out of the apartment door.
Okay. And how were you able to come to that conclusion?
Okay, so
42.
using this, okay. I can explain from here.
They'll get it up on the screen, but you can start narrating and
Okay.
then people can see it on the screen.
This door is actually a metal door. So if shot from the inside, you can kind of see the metal pierce inward on the door. So coming out on the outside, which is what we see here, is someone coming out. If that makes sense. Additionally, I'm able to see the footage of the shots going through the door at the time. So again, you can see that the shots are coming from inside of apartment number 2, going outward through the door. Again, it was 8 shell casings, 8 holes in the door.
Now, you talked about 8 shell casings.
Yes.
How often do you deal with shell casings in your line of work?
Almost all of my cases that involves gunfire.
Okay. And how many cases have you been a part of that you've investigated involve gunfire?
At least 90 of my cases, I've had at least maybe about 40 cases that I was the lead detective on.
Is that 40 cases involving gunfire?
About 90%, at least 90%, yes.
Okay. And each time that you recovered a shell casing, does that mean a projectile was fired from that shell casing in the firearm?
Yes, yes.
Now, is it common to recover more shell casings than projectiles?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what a projectile and a shell casing are individually?
Sure. So when firing anything but a revolver and firing a pistol in this case, there's a shell casing that comes out of the gun and it's a part of the actual bullet. So when you put a bullet in, you're putting in what he's describing as to be a projectile, and around it is the shell casing. The shell casing comes out once the gun is fired and the bullet comes out of the barrel of the gun. Now the projectile will be that part of the bullet. Sometimes we have that, sometimes we don't, but more than likely we will almost always have that shell casing that's just there on the crime scene when we arrive.
Now, when the shell casings are ejected, do they just fall wherever they fall?
Wherever they land.
Okay.
Wherever they land. In this particular case, I believe we had some on the floor, maybe on the couch, but whatever they may land is where we would collect them.
Pulling up States 52. But I'm gonna hand you States 52 and ask you just to start describing what that is and what those stickers are on the door.
The stickers label the gun holes that's on the door, on the metal door. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see 8.
And those holes, did you see similar holes on the door that was directly across the hall from those apartment 2?
Yes, sir. That was apartment number 6. I was able to see holes over there as well.
Okay, I'm showing you now what is State Exhibit 100.
Okay. Excuse me. I see 4 distinct holes in this.
Okay. Now, did you have a chance to go inside of that particular apartment?
Yes, I was allowed in. There was a projectile that was found inside of that apartment, of which we were able to collect.
Okay. I am going to show you now States Exhibit 114 and 117.
Thank you. Okay.
States Exhibit 114, is that a picture from inside of apartment 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then moving next to States 117. What is that depicted in States 117?
That would be a fragment piece, a piece of the projectile that came out through the metal doors. At this point, that projectile would have went through 2 metal doors.
Did you find any other or collect any other evidence from that particular apartment?
Not that I can recall, it was just that.
Okay. And do you recall how long did you actually have access to that particular apartment?
I know it was not long. From the time that I asked permission to what do you mean? How long I had access?
How long were you inside of it? Did you have to ask permission?
I did. I did. The neighbor was very reluctant and a little nervous. He gave me permission to come in, collect. And that's all we were able to do.
So you saw 4 holes
Mhm.
in the door, but you collected 1 projectile.
Yes.
Did you find that odd or for any reason?
No.
Um, So why is it that you normally find more shell casings than you do projectiles?
Because shell casings are right there that's left on scene. Again, it ejects from the handgun, so it's there. Whereas projectiles, they travel with the bullet. Sometimes it hits, in this case, metal, where we could see fragments of it. So, however, sometimes they're just not on scene because the projectile is the bullet. Sometimes we find them in the decedent. Sometimes they go through a decedent and we don't see them at all. So shell casings, they're on scene. Projectiles, they're out as quick as a bullet, literally.
And when you say fragments, are you referring to the projectile broken apart?
Broken apart, pieces of the projectile, yes.
And are there ever times where it fragments to a point where nothing is recovered at all?
Yes, yes.
So after you went through the scene, documented it, collected the evidence, what did you do next?
Next, I went down to headquarters to have an interview with Miss Stuckey.
Okay. And why did you go and interview Ms. Stuckey at headquarters?
It's a easier environment. She's more comfortable, get away from the scene because emotions are very high with her being so close to the decedent. The decedent and Miss Stuckey were in a relationship. This all started with an argument between the two. So it was just for her to be more calm and be more comfortable and have a conversation.
Are you referring the decedent and Ms. Stuckey were in a relationship, or was there another witness?
The decedent and, no, I'm sorry, the defendant. The defendant and Ms. Stuckey were in a relationship.
Okay, so you mean the defendant, not the decedent?
That's correct.
And in this particular case, when you arrived, was the defendant on scene?
Not when I arrived, no.
And did the officers on scene inform you of his identity?
Of his name, I got his name first from Miss Scott,
Okay.
not from the officers, no.
All right. And before we move away from the scene, were you able to collect more footage, any video surveillance?
Yes.
Okay. What were you able to collect?
I was able to see the actual shooting, which was through through the door that we presented today. It was from the apartment, not where the 4 additional holes was in that door, but it was in the apartment beside it that had the camera. Motion only, so doesn't have everything because it's only motion censored. It's not close to the actual incident location, but when the decedent did fall, it did catch the motion of it. So from that point forward, I'm able to see some footage from there.
How did you gain access to that particular footage?
The owner of the camera allowed me to get the footage.
And were you allowed to log in to the owner's Ring account?
He logged in for me and gave me the device, and I was able to prowl from there.
Okay. And so did you go through all of the videos during that time frame?
Yes, I did.
And were you able to collect all of the videos that were saved around the time frame of the shooting?
Yes.
Were there any videos that you did not collect?
There were other videos that he has stored, but I didn't need all of his videos. I got the videos that show the incident, that has the incident.
Was there any videos on that particular scene that showed an argument between any parties in front of the residence where the shooting occurred?
Like during?
Prior to the shooting?
Oh, prior, no.
Okay. If there had been a video like that on his device, would you have retrieved that as well?
Yes, I would have.
And do you recall how many different videos you were able to retrieve?
At least 2, maybe 3.
Go through these videos.
Okay.
Did you turn over every video that you collected? Did you turn it over to the state?
Yes, I did.